Welcome to Exposing the Hidden Reality. I'm Annette, career reinvention coach and caffeine-powered human.
And I'm Sandra, women's life and leadership coach. I bring the woo to our conversations.
And this is the podcast where we call out all the unspoken stuff, biases, outdated expectations, and all the things women navigate in work and in life.
Yes. We bring to light what we see happening. Smart, capable women stuck in the same patterns because no one really talks about what's going on.
We'll bring some difficult truths.
Welcome, insightful experts.
And sprinkle in a little chaos and fun.
It wouldn't be us if we didn't, right?
It's true.
So whether you're walking the dog or tuning in during your commute, we're glad you're here. Let's do this.
Let's do this. You want to do the let's do this together? Like 3, 2, 1, let's do this. All right, 3, 2, 1. Let's
do this.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hello.
See, even with the countdown, we couldn't get it right.
We tried so hard.
That's
really.
great.
We did. Yeah. Well, we are so excited to bring back this season of Exposing the Hidden Reality. This is season 5, and we are super packed with powerful, amazing women that are ready to tell us their stories and show us how they've overcome any challenges. And this morning, we are joined by a set of sisters and twins, Caitie and Maggie. And so I will give you both the floor and allow you to introduce yourselves.
Should I go first? Definitely. And I think for anybody who's listening, like Annette mentioned, we're twins, so the voices are going to sound similar. So I'm Caitie speaking. But yeah, Maggie and I, we started our primary software development business in 2017. So that's what kind of our main sort of focus is right now. But we joke that kind of our point of interaction and I think crossover is more in like the consumer psych side. My focus is more on like the design aspects of our projects. And then Maggie works more on like all the fun, sexy database backend stuff. So, and we joke that kind of our tagline across the two of us is art and science, obviously being art and science. We primarily work with a lot of female founders, but we have built everything from kind of more boring, again, not sexy back-end inventory management systems to mini like Airbnb and Expedia type interfaces, project management tools, kind of anything under the sun. We joke that we have yet to have a founder, I think, bring an idea to us where we've had to say no or that we can't build it. So it's been an amazing journey. Like Caitie said, we started back in 2017 while we were both still in college. I think we dreamed of mornings like today where we would still be doing this as our full-time job. And so to pinch ourselves, even coming to the office this morning, it's a dream come true. So very excited to be here with the two of you.
That's awesome. And when we were backstage, we were talking about what time is it where you are?
Yes. Yep. We're in Boise, Idaho. So it is 6:30. Got lots of coffee.
Yeah, caffeinated and ready to go.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and tell us about your journey about starting the company in the first place.
Yes, I think for both of us, we didn't go to the same college, but I think had similar-ish interests. I think kind of in our early 20s, had kind of hoped, I think, to be able to do some type of company on our own. But I think thinking was that it was probably going to be post kids, post like later in life. Our dad historically has been more entrepreneurial, but our mom is like corporate through and through, like banking, corporate, like very 9 to 5. And so it was very interesting, I think, to have those two polar opposites. And when we were really heavily trying to lean into doing Merakite, there was a line, I think it was kind of agreed upon from both of our parents, that was basically every internship has to tell you no for you to be able to do your own thing, which was kind of an interesting dynamic because you would be like, do I want a rejection email? Like, I don't really know what I'm expecting to get back. And so it was just a very interesting time, I think, for both of us to be in college, trying to figure out what post-grad careers look like. We were class of 2020, so COVID had an interesting spin on things, but I think having a digital-based company, it ended up being a little bit of a
blessing in disguise.
Yeah, and a little bit of a springboard for the two of us. And so when we did both graduate and kind of stumbled upon the fact that it could actually be a real meaningful business that could support the two of us and pay rent and buy groceries and things that didn't really seem possible in college,
I think it has just been amazing to really lean into running the business now. We have the two of us plus 2 other team members who are wonderful. And it has just been, I think, a really fulfilling experience in what we had always hoped and dreamt about for literally the last 7 or 8 years at this point. So
that's amazing. And you not only have one company, but you have 2.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the businesses and what they do and how they help people.
Yep. So do you want to do a little bit more of an intro for Merakite?
Well, I think just in general, so Merakite, again, like Caitie saying, primary business focused really strongly on the app and kind of software development space. We noticed this kind of consistent theme with a lot of our female founders who were kind of teams of one, had an amazing idea, but didn't have the internal support either with another co-founder or would even have all of the enthusiasm, all the excitement, all of the resources to get to launch and then not have a plan after. They were maybe great technical kind of big idea people, but they didn't have the marketing skill set, didn't have the sales skill set. And so when it was like, press the big red launch button, they were like, when are they going to come? Like, where are the users? And it's like, well, that has to be part of your plan. We can help you build it, but how do you actually then kind of foster and build a brand beyond that? And so that kind of then dovetailed really recently in the last 6 or 8 months into the second company of ours called Kinhive, which I'll let Caitie speak.
Yep. So like Maggie mentioned, I think that we kept seeing this pattern be sort of a recurring theme, I think, in a lot of these conversations, even with potential clients where they're like, I would love to work with you, but I don't have like my sounding board or my partner in crime to kind of get me across that process. And so Kinhive came a little bit selfishly from a need inside of Merakite, because I'm like, I don't want that to be a reason that women can't work with us because they don't have that sort of system of support.
Well, and realizing that we were born with it.
Yeah, we were very lucky. And so basically Kinhive as a platform is we use AI matchmaking to essentially either suggest founder to founder, which is kind of a next phase, I think, for us, that sort of just inner community networking that way. But really the primary sort of connectivity that Kinhive offers is between collaborators and founders. So if I'm a founder with a great idea, but I really need my legal powerhouse girl, or I really need somebody to help with post-launch marketing, that we use a lot of different kind of behind the scenes dynamics, whether it's personality, sort of working preferences, location,
life values
combined obviously with then I'm looking for equity, I'm looking for freelancing jobs or employment, and then make those introductions kind of through the platform that way. So that's been really, I think, fulfilling for the two of us to see that come to life. We more formally launched about 2 weeks ago, and being able to see the statistics grow on that platform has been incredible. So that's just been, I think, a really amazing passion project, but just so much of a personal North Star, I think, for both of us.
And I will say too, I think in the 2 weeks since it has gone live, it has been really amazing to see it already working. Because I think for the two of us, we didn't really have a sense. And I think in a platform like that it's so heavily based on supply and demand, there's a lot of pressure to get it right as the team that's helping bring people together. And so as of yesterday, on the kind of 2-ish week mark, we have 550 people already on the platform, which is amazing. And I think over 200 people have kind of reached out at least to one other Kinhive member, and 80 of them have already matched and are chatting. So in 2 weeks to have 80 people that are like, I like you, I think you could add value, I want to work together, has been amazing. And I think just to see the other profiles and things pop up and the ideas that people have for projects has just been, has been really, really amazing, and just deeply fulfilling. So
that's fantastic. So with Kinhive, how do women join? Is it subscription based? Is it membership?
Great question. So I will say, have in the 2 weeks have been playing with some different options, realizing again that the supply and demand is really where the value is. So we had played with the idea of having a more kind of like gatekept pay to play model to try and help kind of, I think, filter out some quality components and just make sure that it's like, if you're trying to find your co-founder, she's worth something, right? But I think ultimately we've kind of gone with more of like a freebie plan that anyone can join. You can start matching with anyone for free, but there's some components, like I know Caitie has put together an amazing like template library for anything from like mutual NDAs to contractor agreements. Those types of features we have tried to kind of just reserve a little bit on a premium plan. But even then the maximum is $24 a month. That just gets you a little bit of extra access within the platform. Otherwise, we really just wanted to make sure that it's like, this is a resource that's missing. If we can help bring people together, I don't want to gatekeep it. It's going to be doing its job regardless. So for the majority of it, I think the access and value will come just from being a free member.
That's fabulous.
That is amazing. So how did you end up identifying women founders as your niche to work with? Like, what drew you to that group of people?
It's really interesting because in our co-working space that we have on our door, like our little sign, and it's like women-led software and app development. And we've had a couple people come by who may or may not have not been women. We're like, I'm curious why you lead with this angle. And we went back and forth on it a lot because I think that we do what we do regardless of who the client is. Obviously, we are not exclusively working with female founders, but there is a shared worldview, I think. And we joke that it's like we send flowers to our clients on launch day. We've had so many like pregnancy announcements over Zoom with like our clients. We've had toddlers on like knees, like
talking about wedding dresses.
Yeah, crying over wedding dresses. And so I think just our shared experience with our client tends to be one that they don't really see when they're talking to other development teams. And so I think as soon as they get on the call with us, there's a sense of like, oh, okay, like I can let my guard down. I can just like talk about my ideas. Even some of the concepts themselves are, again, audience-wise skewed more towards a female demographic, and pitching these concepts to other teams, it may not resonate and they may not get, I think, even like the critical questions to ask about like, well, I don't know if your audience really would go towards this or anything like that. So it hasn't really, I think we didn't set out with that audience in mind. I think we have just found that even the friendships that come out of those client relationships and kind of similar worldviews, all of that, I think has just been a really fulfilling side for us and for the client.
So we love to talk about how women experience life differently. Mm-hmm. So tell us about what happens when you walk into a room and you're IT.
Yeah, I think that
I'm just going to leave it there because I have so many other questions, but we'll start the conversation.
I will say we have kind of two different sides to it as well, because I think that you have obviously the gender dynamic, and then you have the age dynamic as well. Mm-hmm. I think that we, even in our very early stages of Merakite, also dabbled a little bit in more of like the paid ads, oddly, and marketing, which has been helpful for projects like Kinhive because we speak a little bit of that language. But I think that at the time we were 19, like Maggie said, in college. And so I think very early on, we learned that the way to overcome a lot of friction in the workplace is through data. And so I think that has always been a lot of our secret weapon of either I know that I can deliver on an idea, or I know that I can drive results down for a lower cost or anything like that. And so I think that like Maggie said, I think that there's definitely this kinship, I think, when we have these conversations with other female founders. But I do think that when we feel like we have a little bit of that uphill dynamic, I think that we lean into just like merit and data when we can. And so I think that has been really our sort of backbone to, I think, whether it is, again, marketing, software development, that's really been, I think, a guiding principle for both of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. Very early in my career, I was brought into a meeting, maybe following a performance review or maybe getting declined for a promotion. I think that was kind of it. And I was told that I didn't care about data. And I did care about data, but I also thought that the story behind the data can really hit the points home. Mm-hmm. And that always stuck with me. And so I started to lead with data, and for some reason, the numbers are more compelling initially, and then the story can follow later. And that has helped tremendously when I was in corporate America and even now. Mm-hmm. So is that a lesson for women to learn, or is that just a difference that we have to be aware of when we're talking with different groups of people?
I feel like it isn't even so much of a lesson as it is just like a superpower. Mm-hmm. I think that it can justify decisions. I think it can put but a lot of imposter syndrome kind of aside. I think we have found that a lot, that it's like, well, I'm going to try this idea. If I know what I'm looking at for the numbers, I can know if it worked or not. And then it also kind of maybe lights a fire under you a little to either optimize it, fix it, but also learn. So I think it has a lot of benefits if you pay attention to the numbers. I think if you don't pay attention to the numbers, obviously for any client service business, I think you're obviously going to be doing a disservice if you're not paying attention. But I think also as a service provider, you're doing a disservice to yourself too, if you're not at least observing it and trying to maybe learn something from it. So I think it's more of a superpower if you can actually leverage it. I don't think you have to be afraid of it. I think it can feel really intimidating if you don't know necessarily what you're looking at, but I don't know. It has been a huge, huge resource for us just to be able to be like black and white, yes or no, it's working, it's not, and like where can we go from here?
I thought what you said was so interesting, that it's not just the gender dynamic, it's also the age dynamic, right? And I'm wondering if you notice one more than the other, depending on the audience. Like if it's more male audience, is one playing more than the other versus there are women who are making the decisions?
That's a great question.
I will say yes. I think that, again, like Maggie mentioned, our mom is in banking, which is the only way, probably still to this day, that we could get a business credit card. Because that, I swear,
that's a disaster.
Thank God for community banks. We were because we were 19. We were like, I don't want to run it off of a debit card. We had a business bank account, but that was all of it. And every time that we tried to apply for business credit cards, because we were, again, living in dorm rooms, which aren't going to match our Secretary of State business registration, we just got flat out denied for every business credit card we wanted. And so I think that kind of recurring theme, even when we got kicked off our parents' health insurance at 26 and had to figure out our own health insurance internally, or like 401k plans. We've had a lot of meetings where we hop on Zoom like this with some administrator. They're kind of like, okay, are we waiting for anybody else? I'm like, nope, it's the 226-year-olds on your screen. And so I think that sometimes that has just been, I think, a little bit of a common theme in starting our business so early. But I remember being in a college class, and there was some speaker who came in and they said the best time to start a business was before you knew it was a bad idea. And I always thought that was great, because I think that starting as early as we did, I think that we have always led with curiosity.
Yeah, you're never scared.
Because you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes I think, again, that can be a superpower. And so, but I do think, Sandra, to your question, I think that the dynamic around ageism versus maybe a little bit of that gender dynamic, I would say that women tend to be more sensitive, I think, to the age dynamic. But I think that we have it on our side a little bit, that when they're looking for something innovative, we also can play into that a bit.
Right.
And so I think that we have tried to make that a little bit of our selling point as well, of being in tune with some of that stuff, because we come from maybe a little bit of that age differential.
Especially when it comes to things like AI and more of, I think, the newer tech, where if you were maybe working with someone that was more seasoned and in this space, there might be more of a traditional way of doing things. And I think we are maybe a bit more nimble in our curiosity of just like, I don't know, let's just see what works. And again, whether that's kind of being naive and just younger, but that I think has been something where we can kind of brainstorm with them and have more of the fresh take on maybe some of those ideas. I think in terms of maybe more of like the male dynamic, I think maybe sometimes, again, what's interesting is I think the first blush is they're like, oh, it's just like two girls doing this. I think what's been interesting, though, is that then when we can kind of be like, no, we can do this, 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 and this, I feel like they tend to be less, like their wall comes down quicker sometimes. I think they tend to be like, oh, wow, okay, all right. And then it just is like kind of levels the playing field maybe sometimes faster than sometimes when it is in like a women-to-women dynamic.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit.
That's so interesting, because often I'll say, we can talk about the patriarchy all we want, but when we hold women to standards that align with the patriarchy, as women, we are the patriarchy.
Right.
So we need to do a better job of realizing when we are actually hurting ourselves.
Right.
Yeah. I also thought what you said there was so interesting, starting a business young and versus, your original thought that we'll have a business, but, later in life. And one of the things that I personally struggled with was you get to a certain point in your career and the thought of stepping back from that into complete unknown. And is this going to even work? There's a lot of struggle in making that decision.
Yes. I know you were quoted in some article. You had some great quote that was
about which part? What's amazing quote was it?
Pearls of wisdom. I think what's interesting is that even Caitie jokes she's never even had another job.
Oh yes, yeah. So I'm like, you can't blame me for being a bad coworker. I don't know any better, but
yeah. But doing kind of the internship piece in college and all of that, I had a little bit of a taste of more just like what I liked and of like industry wise. I knew that I did kind of like more of the data side. I liked the more technical piece, which was a total 180 from originally starting at college. I was business administration and like cinema. So did a complete flip into more of the data side. But I think that it has been really helpful, I think, to just have this be almost our only experience. We didn't come from other agencies. We didn't have other almost weirdly like baggage of, no, we have to do this way and this way and this thing. And even it has been a lot of pressure, but a lot of, I think, goodness in hiring other people onto our team because we control the company culture. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in that when you aren't, again, being like, well, this is how we did it at my startup. This is how we had like new hires kind of work through the ranks or anything like that. We have a much more inclusive, like we're all in this together, kind of building it together mindset with the other people on our team. And so I think starting it young has been a benefit more than anything. It is still scary, I think, to think about logistically when you're like, okay, the first summer that we did this, we made $1,200 a month. And you're like, that was never going to be sustainable in any actual scale. And when you realize just that the stakes get higher, the company grows, it ends up being, I think, just stressful, but wonderful all at the same time. And obviously, like I said at the beginning, just grateful that we have gotten to this place today and that it has outlasted the 7 years that we've been at it.
I think that's amazing. And I hear like all these words that you're using that talk about your flexibility, you know, being nimble, not knowing what came before you, building together. Like these are all great phrases. And I think it's important, to Sandra's point, that when you do the change later in life, like after a corporate career, like Sandra and I both did, it's so scary because you have all of those institutionalized, those processes, everything that you know how to do, you learned from somewhere else.
Right.
And yes, great examples, but sometimes you go down that very same road because you know it and it seems easier instead of starting from scratch or seeing how it goes. And that mindset is so refreshing. So what are some things that you feel like you totally do different than maybe your mom's training had taught you, you know, from her banking or her finance background?
That's a great question. I think that we are maybe not as afraid, to Maggie's point, as maybe we sometimes should be. I think that it's funny, even yes, being young, I think that has a lot of benefits because you are working with this blank sheet of paper. But at the same time, we joke that our contracts read like a trauma diary because it's like we've just been stubbing our toes on things and like add it to the next contract. And so I think that at times I'm like, oh, wow, that would have been really great to have had corporate experience to be like, I know I need this, this, and this. So I think it's definitely a trade-off. That being said, I think that the work-life balance dynamic has been the most complex. I think that trying to figure that out, one, when you are blessed to love what you do as well on top of it, it's very hard to be like, well, it's 5 o'clock, it's time to go home. And so I think that figuring out that sort of nuance there, where for our mom, again, there's the stability there that's spectacular. And so I think that she has always really loved that as the protective mom. She wanted that for her kids. And so I think that as a mother, she's like, entrepreneurship scares me, which I get. Totally. But I'm also like, well, someone else can fire you versus if I'm in control, like my destiny is a little bit more in our hands. But learning how to turn that switch off and not just work until the wheels come off, I think has been a learning process over the last 7 years and is something that we're still kind of figuring out quite a bit. But I think that not having a boss and a salary when it's just up to you to kind of keep the momentum going, it's very hard, I think, to prioritize everything that happens outside of work sometimes.
I'll say what's also been really interesting is for us kind of, I think, in the chapter of life that we are kind of post-grad, it's been very interesting, even like on LinkedIn, you see kind of college classmates, they're getting promotions and they're kind of like moving up in their career. And when you are working still in the company that you created, like we've never had a promotion. It's always just been like, we're at the top. And, but it's very interesting to have kind of the intrinsic motivation and validation. Like no one's giving you the gold star. Mm-hmm. And I think when you're starting in your career and you're kind of still like a little uneasy on like where I'm going to put my foot next, you're kind of a little like am I doing okay? Like, and there's no one to tell you like, no, you're good. Keep doing this. You're on the right path. There's no validation that comes from any type of like moving up the corporate ladder. You just have to be in it for you, which is amazing. But it is interesting, I think, being in your kind of late 20s, beginning of your career, and having all of these kind of outward pressure and seeing everybody that's like, they're doing X, Y, and Z, and to try and find it that it's like, no, I know I'm exactly where I want to be, but it isn't what you kind of see modeled by other colleagues and classmates and everything else.
That's so powerful and so insightful. And the flip side of that, at least, my experience with it has been that oftentimes you see your colleagues being promoted, and there's a sense of frustration even when you're on the corporate ladder, right? Like, why are they moving? Why am I not moving? And then, what you said earlier, you can be fired at any point in time versus I get to decide, right? And when you've identified with a career choice, a career level, and being at a certain point in your career journey, when that happens to you, there can be a tremendous amount of grief around that process as well. And I think a loss of identity too. So the fact that you're grappling with that is insightful, and there are pros and cons on both sides of that fence.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so powerful. I loved what you said about our contracts read like a trauma diary. So I love that whole thing. And I'm looking at Stella, who commented, and she's a colleague of ours. And I think she would totally resonate with what you said about that. It's like, oh, I better add that into my next contract.
Yep.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Let's add that in too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I will say though, even in that context, it has been amazing. I mean, one of our closest friends, I think, in the sort of women in business network that we've established, just cold reached out over Instagram DMs, and she works in more of the kind of brand identity and graphic design space. And it started with a very kind of slightly more formal virtual coffee night, and then now has become like 3-hour wine nights over Zoom. And so it's definitely more of a friendship there. But she was spectacular. We traded contracts. Granted, like there's some, I think, synergies between our industries there, but being able to be like, oh, yes, okay, you went through that horrible experience. I'm going to protect you from this thing that I went through. And so that networking, I think, even with her has been spectacular to kind of just be able to take advantage of a little bit of that network and shared experience so you don't both have to go through it. And when you both miss it, then you can bond over a glass of wine and Zoom. And so that's good too.
The other one I will say that was really valuable with this other kind of friend of ours is pricing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially as kind of like, if you're, again, not in the corporate piece where people are like, well, this is what we charge. We know that it's like this value for X, Y, and Z. There's this very funny story the two of us had probably a year and a half ago where we had a new client call, and we'd been working with a phenomenal business coach here in Boise, and we were trying to kind of get a sense for pricing. And I remember we were literally about to click the start button on this Zoom meeting. And we're like, we should just double what we're going to pitch for the number and just see what happens. Like, we don't know. We keep saying numbers and no one says no. Like, let's just double it and see if we can find where the limit is. And I remember we doubled it and they were like, sounds great. And we're like, sounds great. That's great. So that has been, I think, really interesting, trying to get a sense, and whether it is through other mutual contacts or anything, of just like, hey, what do you charge for your services? Do you structure it hourly? Like, do you do retainers? Like, just trying to get a sense for what other people in the industry do, even if it's not specifically app and software development. It's a good, I think, just comparison on some of that, because I think, again, coming from college, you're like, I have no idea. I know I have value. And I think what's interesting too is that being in our position, if roles were reversed and someone, like, we were going to hire someone to build it, there's a number that like we're comfortable with that may or may not be someone else's number. And so it's just been kind of interesting, I think, to get a sense for what pricing actually looks like at scale and across a lot of different industries, a lot of different projects. I think we're starting to kind of narrow in on that a bit.
Yeah, but the pricing thing is tricky because I think it comes with, I would say that, to give men credit, I think they're probably better at talking about money as just a general stereotype. I think that it was honestly part of a conversation that we had even around Kinhive about this, asking about what to charge and kind of what that market dynamic is. It was a big part. We had this idea to basically in sort of more of our community forums and community chat to add basically an anonymous mode. And so I think that has been a really helpful thing for us just even to have in our community of if people are like, I want to ask tricky questions about pricing or motherhood or guilt about leaving a corporate job and stability. I think that because we have felt even ourselves maybe subliminally held back from asking for advice around more taboo topics, I think that that was really a huge aha moment, I think, for us, just from a feature development perspective.
That we added the night before we launched.
This needs to go
This
in.
is great. This has to be part of the MVP. But I think it's helpful because I think for a lot of those topics, especially if you didn't even have the safety net of feeling like you could talk about that in a corporate capacity, I think you definitely maybe aren't sure how to navigate that if you're a solo founder or have never had that experience. It feels like the Wild West and something that you don't necessarily just want to show your cards right out of the gate.
Yeah, it feels something like that is so private when you talk about pricing initially, and then you talk about it the first time, and then you talk about it the second time, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, there's value in sharing because that's where we build community. We have more knowledge together. We have more ability to support each other together. And then as another business owner or woman, you could say, oh, I never pay that, right? And then okay, maybe that price is a little bit higher, or you could say, this is what I would be comfortable paying. And money is one of those things that holds us back if we're not willing to talk about it.
Yes.
So the fact that you have it out there with the little anonymous button, like, okay, maybe I talk about it anonymously at first.
Yes.
But then we're able to share. And then I don't know if you've read We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rodgers, but she comes right out of the gate, like by chapter 2 or 3. And she's like, double your prices. That's it. Just put it out there, double your prices. And then you can start to have the conversation. And so how does that mindset feed into how you serve your clients?
I will say a big part of around kind of the pricing conversation, especially in this industry, is there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and a lot of, we've heard horror stories of people forging emails to say that projects have been delivered, people changing like addresses and like leaving the state, like crazy stories from old development teams. The biggest, I think, again, around money is it's a trust building tool if you use it correctly. And so a lot of other development teams will be like, well, we need 50% upfront to reserve, or 100% upfront to reserve your spot and resources and everything else. And for a lot of these founders, if they have the cash on hand at all, because that's a big if, right? That it's like you're starting a brand new idea that isn't cash flow positive. That money has to come from somewhere. If you have the resources, that's a scary release of trust and everything to this person that you basically have maybe had 1 or 2 Zoom calls with. But it's also just, I think, not a very, like, there's no possible way as the developer team that you necessarily also like know the entire scope of that project. Like I don't even understand how people can ask for 50% upfront. So our model has really kind of changed and I think resonates with a lot of these early stage founders, because what we do is we have like a whole first date Zoom call. We see if we all like each other. And then we do basically like a massive collaborative Google Doc to understand your project in as much detail as possible. And we ask for wish list items. Like we want to know everything that you want in your project. Mm-hmm. And then it's on us to lock in a number. And it's like, that is the number that we stand by, that we put like us behind, our company behind, like that is the number we will build everything in this document for. And then we just divide it into monthly payments for how long the build takes. And I think it gives so much trust up front, because it's like, I'm not asking for 50%. We're going to tiptoe into this together. Mm-hmm. It gives obviously a lot of flexibility around being able to afford the project, build the project, obviously draw it out over however many months you want. But that I think has been a huge piece of just mutual trust building and getting to know the client in the same way that they get to know us. Mm-hmm. And I think has ended up being a lot more of an approachable option for a lot of our founders, where it's like they are just getting started. That has been a huge benefit for them.
So much good stuff you said there. When we were getting ready backstage, I said, and I used to be in IT, my role in IT was project management, and it's amazing to me the number of times that we don't do a good job of defining scope. And
Right.
what I find about scope is it's not just important to define what's in scope, it's also important to define what's not in scope. I don't mean this, this, and this, right?
Yes.
Especially as a project manager, because oftentimes what would happen is people would say, oh no, I assumed that was in there. Well, no, that not at that price, it's not.
Yep.
And I think the other part of it too that you spoke about that a lot of people forget, and I think there's so much value in, is talking about requirements. Like, what are the business objectives?
Right.
What are the business requirements? Not just the technical requirements, but the business requirements themselves, and going through that process. So I became a project manager, but at first I was a technical person. And what ends up happening with a lot of technical people is they just want to get in there and do the work, right?
Right.
It's like, go away, project manager. Let me start playing with this stuff,
Yeah, right.
And nobody, customers and tech people, nobody wants to take the time to actually go through scope planning, project charters, requirements planning, and that is such an important part of the process.
Absolutely. Well, and something that I think has become something that we've leaned into in that context, even with, again, not knowing what we don't know, is that we've used AI, I think, to kind of supplement and fill in some gaps as well. And so what we tend to do is that we'll put together a little bit of that scope of work. We'll have all of this big, long meeting notes from our initial Zoom call, and then be like, flag the things that should be exclusions, flag the things that we are missing and we need to define to kind of fill in against some of those gaps around scope creep. And so I think that has helped us bridge the gap of maybe the years of experience that we don't have and the traumas we haven't encountered yet. But I think that has been something that we have tried to really embrace, I think, at both of our companies, obviously, but definitely when it comes to scope definition, I think that AI is an amazing tool for some of that to just help be a little bit of your blind spotter, I think, in some ways also.
Well, I think especially as a relatively small team with limited resources,
yeah,
you have to define. It is worth the extra full day of defining scope of work if it protects you 8 months down the line.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know that there was a contract we put together probably a year and a half to 2 years ago that there was like one bullet point for like chat. And you're like, chat is, do you want GIFs? Do you want voice notes? Do you want attachments? Do you want like reply functionality? Do you need email notifications when people get mentioned? Like there was so much to it. And we were like, no, chat. And now it's like, if someone asks for chat, it's like, again, these are the 3 things that come with it. If you want any of this section in the big red exclusions block, like we can bring those up, but it is not part of this like main thing. And so I think that has been helpful, but it's hard because you sign that contract. If you don't have it in that section, you can't go back and be like, no, wait, we told them. And you're like, you didn't. So now it's whatever they were assuming and they signed off on, it's then puts you again in a weird, interesting, like better grow up fast position. Like, do you want to now make the client mad? Do you want to honor the fact that you probably didn't define your contract correctly, which is what you ultimately, I think, as good service providers, you do.
Yeah.
That it's like, well, I wasn't really clear on what that included. You can't go to the client and be like, well, I didn't explicitly say I was going to build that. That typically doesn't go over very well. So we end up more like you fall on the sword and you're like, that's on me again for the next time. If we're going to build chat, it's going to have like these 10,000 bullet points on what is defined as part of that. So it is just hard because I think the learning cycle on those contracts, you can't fix it for another 8 to 12 months. If you learn something new, you get kind of locked in on stuff.
Yeah, but I do think when used correctly, the exclusion section is a fun sales tool because I think that it starts conversations. Yeah, about like, okay, well, we're going to save that for a V2, or like, oh, that's not included, but let's include it and up the price, or that started kind of a new idea. And so I think that doesn't have to be always this line in the sand of like, I'm not doing this. I think that it just, again, is more about boundaries, but can have some brainstorming there as well.
So smart.
So great.
Yeah.
So
what would you tell other female founders, either coming from a position like Sandra and I came from, where their startup is their second career, or maybe new founders like you that started their career out of the box entrepreneurs?
I think that my favorite piece of advice is because I think that whether it's kind of this career 2.0 or it's something you love while you're in college or something, I think that my biggest piece of advice is always to find some way to get paid for the thing that you think you love first. Because I think that even if you are doing it in your 5 to 9 after your 9 to 5, I think that the dynamic around having somebody be your boss, whether they're a client or an employer, I think that when money is changing hands, there can sometimes be a different dynamic of like, oh, I don't love this as much as I thought that I would. And so I think that before doing that full leap of faith into I'm going to do this other thing, or I'm going to follow my passion and go do something that I love, I think that being able to have some sort of money changing hands, I think is always just a good litmus test of whether or not that really has legs. I think kind of beyond that startup gradient in between, maybe whether it's college or again, this career 1.0, I think that tends to be something that we were freelancing all through college. And I think that was really helpful to be like, oh, I do still love this. Even if I have the variety and dynamics of multiple clients, that was almost a plus instead of something of being like, oh, well, I love doing this kind of work, but if somebody is my boss, I don't love it as much. So I feel like that's something that at least from the creative soul between the two of us, I feel like that tends to be my advice.
Well, which I think is always funny because I think a lot of people are like, oh, you need to make sure you love it if you're not getting paid, right? Do it for the love of doing it. And I think Caitie's take on it is a more realistic view of that. It's like, you need to make sure you love it when it's just a job too.
Sometimes that is, you hope that it's not always.
Right. But sometimes it is also just a job. So I think my take on it kind of ties more into Kinhive and this project that we have now. But I think just to not be afraid to do it alone. I think that there is a lot of pressure that it's like, if you have an idea, like you have to be the one to see it through and through. But I think by being able to find somebody that at least it's like 2:00 in the morning, you can send a voice note and be like, I'm having a mental breakdown. Like, I don't know if we should still do this. Like, if there's just a sounding board where you can bounce ideas off of someone, ideally where they have complementary skill sets. We have been fortunate enough, weirdly, again, as identical twins, we have very little overlap in the things that we like. Like, I know I'm never going to step on her toes and I'm never going to like accidentally take a task that she really wanted. Like, we don't have the same interests in that way. But I think that it's just make sure that you don't feel like you have to do it alone. You can find somebody, I think, that just can really give you, I think, the energy and the passion and the like, absolutely, we've got this type energy. That would be, I think, my biggest thing. And again, I'm grateful that I have it in Caitie, but I'm aware that a lot of people don't necessarily have that luxury.
Well, I love what you said about Kinhive with respect to just having a community of people that I can talk to. Annette and I have a networking group here locally, and I know I speak for both of us when I say that's such a powerful experience to walk into a room of women who are not only in the same position you're in, trying to run an organization, trying to run a company, trying to grow their company, but also, who are there supporting each other, right? Yeah. I want to cheer you on. I want to see you win, because when you win, we all win, right?
Right.
Yes, absolutely true. So as we're winding this conversation down, where can we find you? How can we work with you if we need your support or something like your support? Tell us all that.
Absolutely. So for Merakite, it's just merakite.com. We, like Maggie mentioned, we obviously have a little bit of a soft spot for women in business and female founders. So we love, obviously, all of those introductions. And I know Maggie mentioned as well, we haven't ever encountered something that we can't build. So we do, I think, love a challenge, naively so sometimes. But again, we're having, I think, a lot of fun building any projects in the AI space, any projects that support women. All of that, I think, is very near and dear to us right now. Kinhive is also just kinhive.com. Merakite's is at Merakite on Instagram. Kinhive's, while we wait for our trademark, is just at Join Kinhive. But yeah, all of those, I think that it's such a amazing, I think, kind of confirmation of just where we're at in our careers, I think, to be able to connect with more women founders. And so whether it's just like a Zoom call to chat through ideas and things, I think that all of that is just really amazing for both of us. But being able to see people join Kinhive and, like Maggie said, already get some of that value from that, I think that has been really special too. So we would love anybody who wants to join us on there too.
Yes.
I think that is going to be really special to see that continue to grow as well.
Yes. And I see some amazing women that we know on this chat string here. And I know they're going to be reaching out to you because it's it's so aligned and such an important conversation. And the two of you are such impressive young women. So as a mother of twins, I have a very important question.
Yes.
Did you fight when you were younger?
I really think the only fight that we have, well, there are two fights. I had to drag Maggie to do Merakite with me. I think that because I went to school in the Bay Area, which is very startup-y. And so very early on, I was like, I want to be self-employed. I want to do my own thing. And Maggie had a little bit more of, again, the classic business school type dynamic. And so I remember having to pitch to her. I was like, come, let's do this. And she's like, I don't know. And I remember I drew her a graph on the back of a napkin that I was like, this is the earning potential for self-employed. Like, I want to do this differently. And so being like the money data one, she was like, okay.
A good graph is the way to my heart. Yeah.
But there was a little bit of friction there. I was like, because again, I was like, I don't want to do this alone. I'm like, I can't do this without you. Like, I need you with me on this. I don't want to go get
or you're not going to do it.
Yeah. And so I was like, if she doesn't buy in with this and wants to go 50-50, like this option is now not for me either. And so fight is maybe a little bit more of a dramatic word, but I remember her visiting me on campus and I was like, you have to do this. We'd be on the phone. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we have to do this together. Otherwise, I think that we kind of just have this analogy of like, there's a 5-gallon bucket and we both have Dixie cups. And like, sometimes you can put 2 Dixie cups in the bucket. Some days it's none, but like everybody's trying to fill the bucket. And so I think that has been a really good stabilizing force with us of like, give 100% of what you can, and your 100% might look different every day. And so that I think has been really good for us, knowing that we're 50-50 partners, our interests are aligned. And so, but we're never trying to be like, you've got to be 200 miles an hour every day either.
Yeah.
As kids, though, we didn't fight. We've been like nerdy best friends our entire life.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got very lucky. I think, like Maggie said, I think that we always felt like being able to work together was going to be this treat that we were going to have to wait, and we wouldn't get that opportunity to do until kind of, again, this sort of chapter 2.0. And so to be able to have made it work post grad, I never thought we would be that lucky. So I'm very grateful for her.
So my boys are in completely different fields. One is in business. Now they're going into their sophomore year in college. So we have some time here, right? Yep. So one's a business major, the other one's a games animation major. And I keep saying to them, look, between the two of you, you have, half a company. You just need somebody with, legal, and your sister's like planning legal. So like you have a company. And they're like, no, I keep hoping.
No, I think we got very lucky that we are compatible. I think as business partners, as friends, all of that, we don't get sick of each other. And I think also have a lot of respect for the other one. And it's a very friendly encouragement of like, I know her potential and she knows mine. And I think just the, like, you've got this. And I think there have been times she's, I think, better at it than I am. But when she recognizes like, Maggie, you're half-assing it, like give it more. I'm like, no, you're right. Okay. And so that dynamic has also, I think, been really good of just this positive echo chamber of just like, we've got this and we've always wanted this. So like, go get it, I think has been amazing.
That's
what amazing. A fabulous conversation. I have absolutely loved getting to know the two of you.
True.
I hope we stay in touch.
Yes, no, and thank you for having us. And obviously, season premiere, this was like extra special. So no, I am so glad. Worth the 6:30 and everything. I'm almost done with mine. No, it was so wonderful, and we love, I think, being able to share our story. If it inspires anybody, I think obviously then we feel like we've done our job. And just thank you for having us and for such great questions and letting us kind of share a little bit about us and our story.
Absolutely. We wish you so much success. 2 weeks into a launch, I didn't realize it was so new, and we will definitely be checking it out. Looks like Stella already signed up.
Yes.
So there you go. The gift that keeps on giving. I think creating a community is one of the best things that you can do. Surround yourself with people that question you and support you, and you will no doubt be super successful. And I think your phase 1 will set you up for your phase 2, whatever that looks like for you.
Yes.
Welcome again, and congratulations. And we're so happy that you took the time out to talk with us today.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you both so much.
All right. Let's see if I hit the button, if it works properly.
That's a wrap on this episode of Exposing the Hidden Reality. If something hit home or made you snort laugh, tell us.
Seriously, we love hearing from you. Message us, tag us, or send us coffee. We love coffee.
And hey, leave a review. It helps more women find us and boosts our egos.
Which are like fragile, like suspiciously fragile.
True. All right, until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and if all else fails,
Blame the dog.
see you
next time.
Wait, did we stop recording?
No, we're still here. You have to push the red button.
Red button. Cool. Just eternal podcast.
Bye.
Bye.